The iron shackles bite into Clara's wrists as she's dragged across the frost-crusted stone floor of the Winter Fang Great Hall. The sound of metal scraping against ancient rock echoes through the cavernous chamber like a death knell. She keeps her eyes down, platinum blonde hair falling like a funeral veil over her face, hiding the shame burning in her cheeks. Around her, the assembled wolves of the North watch in cold silence, assessing her the way hunters assess prey that's already caught. She's merchandise, nothing more. The hall is a monument to cruelty. Towering arches drip with icicles as thick as spears, and behind the raised dais looms a throne constructed entirely of rusted swords, each one claimed from a conquered enemy. The temperature drops with every step closer to that throne, frost forming on her ragged white chemise until she's shivering so violently her teeth clack together. Then she feels it, the weight of his gaze. Alpha King Nass sits motionless on his brutal throne, a mountain of black armor and raven-dark hair, his eyes fixed on her with an intensity that makes her skin prickle. The rumors said he was a monster, that human brides brought to his hall never lasted past the claiming bite, that his mercy had frozen over with his cursed land. Bring her closer. His voice rumbles through the hall like distant thunder. Clara's legs refuse to move. The guards shove her forward until she stumbles, falling to her knees at the base of the dais. The impact sends a jolt of pain through her bones, but it's nothing compared to the burning sensation suddenly flaring beneath her shoulder. The mark she's hidden her entire life, the scar her pack elders called a curse, the reason they sold her for a sack of gold and 3 barrels of grain. Don't let it show. Don't let it glow. Not here. Not now. But the mark has never listened to her prayers. Nass rises from his throne, descending the steps with the deliberate grace of a predator. Each footfall reverberates through Clara's chest. When he stops before her, she can smell winter pine and something ancient, something that tastes like starlight dying in the cold. Look at me, he commands. She doesn't dare. Looking means meeting those wolf gold eyes. Looking means acknowledging what comes next. The inspection, the claiming, the inevitable. His gauntlet hand reaches for her shoulder. The moment his fingers brush the fabric of her chemise, the world erupts in golden light. 7 hours earlier, Clara had always known she was worthless. The pack elders of Thornvale had made certain of that from the moment her mother died and left her alone at 13. No wolf, they whispered behind cupped hands. Damaged goods. That mark on her shoulder, probably diseased. For 7 years, she scrubbed floors, hauled water from the frozen well, and endured the mockery of wolves who saw her as less than human. Worthless, but still useful, until the famine came and Thornvale needed something to trade. That's when Elder Rowan announced she'd been sold. The North needs brides, he'd said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. And we need to survive winter. You should be honored, girl. King Nass rarely purchases from the southern territories. Honored, as if being shackled and loaded into the bride's cage, an iron wagon that reeked of fear and old blood, was some kind of gift. The journey north took 5 days. 5 days of grinding wheels over frozen earth, of howling winds that cut through her thin clothes, of watching the landscape transform from rolling hills to jagged peaks crowned with eternal ice. The other girls in the cage whispered stories about King Nass, how he'd ruled the North for 2 centuries, how his land had been locked in winter for 500 years, how he devoured brides who disappointed him. Clara didn't speak. She kept her hand pressed against her shoulder, against the mark that had started burning the moment they crossed into Northern territory. The heat of it was the only warmth she'd felt since leaving Thornvale. When the cage finally stopped before the obsidian gates of the Winter Fang Citadel, Clara understood why the stories called this place the Frozen Hell. The fortress rose from the mountains like a black talon clawing at the sky, its towers wrapped in ice so thick it glowed blue in the dying light. The air tasted of metal and old violence. The guards separated the brides into groups. Most were terrified, weeping. A few tried to run. Clara simply stood there, numb and resigned, as they fitted her with the presentation shackles, lighter than the transport chains, but inscribed with runes that burned against her skin. King Nass seized the merchandise tonight, the captain of the guard announced, his voice devoid of sympathy. You'll be brought to the Great Hall for inspection. Pray he finds you acceptable, or you'll wish you'd died on the journey. Now, kneeling before the Alpha King with golden light exploding from her shoulder like a second sun, Clara realizes that acceptable was never part of her destiny. The mark, the sunborn seal, burns through her chemise, illuminating every shadow in the hall. The heat of it is overwhelming, radiating outward in waves that make the icicles overhead begin to weep. Nass stumbles backward, his gauntlet hand raised to shield his eyes, and for the first time in 200 years, the King of the North looks afraid. Then, in a movement that shatters every law of the northern packs, he drops to one knee. His voice, when it comes, is raw with something Clara can't name, reverence, perhaps, or recognition. The Sunborn has returned. Behind him, every wolf in the great hall falls to their knees in a wave of clanking armor and gasping breaths. The sound is like an avalanche, unstoppable, absolute. Clara's heart hammers against her ribs as she slowly lifts her head, platinum hair falling away from her face. For the first time in her life, she doesn't feel worthless. She feels dangerous. And somewhere in the depths of the frozen castle, something ancient stirs, something that's been waiting 500 years for this exact moment. Subscribe to see how this unfolds and comment where you're watching from. I will love to say hello to you just to know. Chapter 1. The First Bow ****. The golden light doesn't fade. If anything, it intensifies, pulsing from Clara's shoulder in waves that seem to have a heartbeat of their own. The Sunborn seal burns so brightly that the shadows in the great hall flee to the farthest corners, cowering against stone that hasn't seen warmth in centuries. Clara's shackles shatter. Not unlock, **** star. The iron explodes into fragments that clatter across the frost-covered floor like broken stars, the runes inscribed on them smoking and hissing as though doused in water. She gasps, cradling her freed wrists against her chest, but her eyes are fixed on the impossible sight before her. Alpha King Nass, terror of the north, breaker of armies, the wolf who had never bowed to anything in 200 years of brutal reign, kneeling. "My king," one of the guards starts, his voice strangled with confusion. ***kneel***. Nass commands without looking away from Clara. The word cracks through the hall like a whip, and the guard drops so fast his armor clangs against stone. Within seconds, every wolf in the chamber has followed suit. The captain of the guard, the sentries at the door. Even the servants pressed against the walls sink to their knees, heads bowed. Clara's breath comes in short, sharp bursts. This can't be real. This can't be happening. She's merchandise. She's worthless. You are the Sunborn, Nass says, and his voice carries a weight that makes the very air tremble. The prophecy spoke of your return. 500 years we have waited in this cursed winter, and now you stand before me, marked with the seal of the celestial sovereign. The words mean nothing to Clara. Prophecy. Celestial sovereign? Her mother never mentioned any of this. Her mother only ever told her to hide the mark, to never let anyone see it, to pretend it didn't exist. I don't understand, Clara stammers, and she hates how small her voice sounds in this cavernous hall. Nass finally lifts his gaze to meet hers fully, and Clara's breath catches. His eyes aren't just gold, they're molten, burning with an intensity that should terrify her, but somehow doesn't. There's recognition there. Recognition and something that looks dangerously close to hope. You will, he promises. Then, still kneeling, he reaches for the fur-lined cloak draped across his shoulders and pulls it free. In one fluid motion, he rises and wraps it around Clara's trembling form. The cloak is massive, designed for a man twice her size, but the weight of it is comforting. It smells like winter pine and smoke, and something indefinably him. Rise, Nass commands the room, and the assembled wolves obey with military precision. But their eyes, every single pair, remain fixed on Clara with expressions ranging from awe to fear to naked hostility. A woman near the front, dressed in furs dyed deep crimson and adorned with silver rings in her ears, steps forward. Her face is sharp and beautiful in a predatory way, and when she speaks, her voice drips with poorly concealed venom. "My king, surely you cannot mean to." "Lady Morvain." Nass doesn't raise his voice, but the woman goes silent as if he'd struck her. "You will address the Sunborn with the respect her station commands, or you will find yourself stripped of your title and exiled beyond the frozen wastes before dawn." Lady Morvain's jaw clenches, but she dips into a stiff curtsy. "Of course, my king." The words taste like poison on her tongue. Nass turns back to Clara, and when he speaks again, his voice is gentler, though no less commanding. "Come. We have much to discuss, and you need food, warmth, and rest." The presentation is concluded. He offers his hand, not as a command, but as an invitation. Clara stares at it, this gauntlet hand that could crush stone, that has claimed countless lives, that now extends toward her with something that might actually be tenderness. Slowly, She places her palm against his. The moment their skin touches, even through the leather of his glove, the mark on her shoulder flares again, and Nass draws in a sharp breath. "Yes," he murmurs, so quietly that only she can hear. "You are the one from my dreams." Before Clara can ask what he means, he's guiding her toward a side entrance, away from the throne and the crowd of watching wolves. As they pass through the doorway, Clara catches a glimpse of Lady Morvaine's face, and the hatred burning their promises that tonight's revelation has made her a very dangerous enemy. Chapter 2. The Obsidian Tower ***. The suite they bring her to defies everything Clara thought she knew about the Winter Fang Citadel. Where the great hall was all brutal stone and frozen cruelty, this chamber is a sanctuary carved from darkness and luxury. The walls are polished obsidian that reflects firelight like captured stars. Thick furs cover a bed large enough for 3 people. Silk tapestries depicting wolves running beneath a golden sun hang from iron rods, and a fire roars in a hearth so massive Clara could stand inside it without ducking. "This was my mother's chamber," Nass says from the doorway. He hasn't removed his armor, hasn't relaxed the rigid set of his shoulders. It's been sealed since her death 3 centuries ago. No one else has ever been permitted to enter. Clara turns slowly, taking in the space with wide eyes. A mother's chamber. A queen's chamber. Why give it to me? Because you are not a prisoner here, Clara of Thornvale. The way he says her name, as if testing how it feels on his tongue, makes something flutter in her chest. You are a guest. More than a guest. You are. He trails off, seeming to struggle with words for the first time since she met him. I'm what? Clara presses, surprised by her own boldness. Nass steps fully into the room and closes the door behind him with a soft click that somehow feels intimate despite the vast space between them. When he finally speaks, he sounds tired, bone-deep tired in a way that has nothing to do with physical exhaustion. Do you know why the North has suffered 500 years of winter? Clara shakes her head. Because we lost our sunborn. Nass moves to one of the tapestries, reaching up to trace the golden sun embroidered there. Long ago, before the eternal ice, the North was ruled by a partnership, a sunborn sovereign who controlled light and warmth, and a moonborn king who commanded the wolves and the hunt. Together, they kept the land in balance. But the last sunborn was murdered by those who coveted her power, and with her death, the balance broke. The sun stopped rising over our territory. The warmth fled, and we have been dying slowly ever since. He turns back to Clara, and the firelight catches on his face in a way that makes him look less like a monster and more like a man bearing an impossible weight. For 2 centuries, I have ruled a land locked in perpetual twilight. I have watched my people starve. I have sent wolves south to trade for grain we can no longer grow. I have become exactly the tyrant the stories claim, because mercy is a luxury the dying cannot afford. His voice cracks on the last word, just slightly, but Clara hears it. Then why? She has to stop, clear her throat. Why did you buy me? Because 3 months ago, I dreamed of you. Nass says it simply, as if prophetic dreams are perfectly normal. I saw a woman with hair like starlight and a mark that burned gold. I saw her standing in my hall while the ice wept and the sun returned. Every night since, the same dream. I sent scouts south searching. And when word came of a marked girl being sold by Thornvale, he gestures at her with something that might be helplessness. I didn't buy you to be a bride, Clara. I bought you to save my people. The weight of that confession settles over the room like snow. Clara should feel angry, should feel used, manipulated, turned into a tool for someone else's salvation. But looking at Nass, at the shadows under his eyes and the way his hands clench and unclench at his sides as if fighting the urge to reach for her, all she feels is a strange, aching sympathy. I don't know how to save anyone, she whispers. I don't even know what this mark is. My mother told me to hide it. The elders called it a curse. Your mother, Nass says carefully, knew exactly what it was. And she was trying to protect you from those who would either worship you or destroy you before you came into your power. Before Clara can respond, a soft knock sounds at the door. Nass stiffens, his hand moving instinctively to the sword at his hip. Enter, he calls. A young woman slips inside, carrying a tray laden with food. She's small and dark-haired, with eyes that flick nervously between Clara and the king. She sets the tray on a low table near the fire and curtsies so deeply she nearly topples over. Food for the sunborn, my king, she stammers. And Healer Oren says he'll attend her in the morning to examine the mark, if that pleases you. It pleases me. Thank you, Bessa. Nass's voice gentles when addressing the girl, and Clara realizes that whatever monster he might be to his enemies, he's not cruel to those who serve him. Bessa flees with another curtsy, and Nass turns back to Clara. Eat. Rest. Tomorrow, we begin understanding what you are and what you can do. But tonight, you are safe. I give you my word, no one will harm you within these walls. He moves toward the door, but Clara's voice stops him. Nass. He pauses, looking back over his shoulder. In your dream, Clara asks, does the sun actually return? Or do I fail? For the first time since she met him, the Alpha King smiles. It's a small thing, barely a curve of his lips, but it transforms his entire face. The sun returns, he says, and the ice breaks, and my people remember what it feels like to be warm. Then he's gone, the door closing softly behind him, leaving Clara alone in a queen's chamber with a tray of food and a future that terrifies her more than any claiming bite ever could. Chapter 3. The Blood Bond ***. Clara doesn't sleep. How can she, when her entire understanding of reality has been shattered and rebuilt in the space of a few hours? She spends the night pacing the obsidian chamber, wrapped in Nass's cloak, watching the fire burn down to embers, and then feeding it more logs because the cold seeps in the moment the flames die. The mark on her shoulder hasn't stopped burning. It's not painful exactly, more like a constant warmth, a reminder that something inside her has awakened and refuses to be ignored again. Dawn doesn't come. Of course it doesn't. This is the land of eternal winter, eternal twilight. Instead, the sky outside the tower window simply shifts from black to a deep, bruised purple that might be the north's approximation of daylight. The knock comes precisely when the purple reaches its lightest point. Clara knows, somehow, that it's Nass before she opens the door. He's removed his armor. The change is startling. Without the black plate and heavy furs, he's still massive, easily a head taller than her, and built like he was carved from the same stone as his citadel. But he looks younger, more human. He wears simple leather and wool, though the sword still hangs at his hip like a permanent extension of his body. Did you rest? He asks. Clara almost laughs. No. Good. I didn't either. There's something almost conspiratorial in his tone, as if they're allies in sleeplessness. Come. There's something I need to show you before Healer Orin arrives. He leads her through corridors that twist and climb, past windows that show nothing but ice-covered mountains and sky the color of old bruises. They pass servants who flatten themselves against walls at Nass's approach, eyes downcast. Clara notices that none of them look at her directly either. Whether from respect or fear, she can't tell. They end up in a chamber at the very top of the obsidian tower. It's circular, with windows on all sides and a floor covered in intricate silver inlay that forms patterns Clara doesn't recognize. At the center of the room stands a pedestal, and on that pedestal rests a book bound in what looks like moonlight and shadow. The Book of Bonds, Nass says reverently, written by the first Sunborn and the first Moonborn when they created the partnership that would govern the North. Every major truth about our kind is recorded here. He opens the book with careful hands, flipping through pages that seem to glow with their own internal light. Finally, he stops on a spread that shows two figures, one wreathed in golden flames, one surrounded by silver moonlight, standing with their hands clasped and their foreheads touching. The blood bond, Nass reads aloud. When the Sunborn and Moonborn unite, they become two halves of one power. The Sunborn commands the light, the warmth, the growth. The Moonborn commands the hunt, the cold, the protection. Apart, they are formidable. Together, they are sovereign over all wolves, all elements, all magic within their territory. Clara stares at the illustration. You're saying we're supposed to, what? Rule together. More than that. Nass's finger traces the text beneath the image. We're supposed to bond. It's not marriage, though it often leads there. It's something older. Something that ties our very essences together. The Sunborn cannot reach their full power without their Moonborn counterpart, and the Moonborn cannot break their curse without their Sunborn. Curse. Clara looks up sharply. Nass's jaw tightens. When the last Sunborn died, the bond broke violently. Every Moonborn in the North felt it, felt our other half being ripped away. It drove some mad. It killed others outright. Those of us who survived were left, diminished, weaker, and bound to the eternal winter until a new Sunborn was born to restore the balance. Clara's mind reels. So you need me. Not want. Asterisk need starred. Yes. Nass closes the book, and when he meets her eyes, there's a vulnerability there that makes her chest ache. "I won't lie to you, Clara. I need you to save my people." But he hesitates, seeming to war with himself. "The dreams I've had of you for 3 months, they're not just prophecy. They're the bond recognizing its other half. You feel it too, don't you? The pull." Clara wants to deny it, wants to claim she feels nothing but fear and confusion. But that would be a lie. From the moment Nass touched her shoulder in the Great Hall, something inside her has been reaching toward him like a flower turning toward the sun. Even now, standing 3 feet apart, she feels the urge to close that distance, to touch him, to see if her mark will flare again with that same golden light. "I feel something," she admits quietly, "but I don't know if it's real or if it's just magic. Destiny, whatever you want to call it. Does it matter?" Nass asks. "Real magic, destiny. They're all the same thing in the North. What matters is whether you're willing to try. To let me teach you to use your power. To form the bond that could save both our peoples. And if I say no?" Nass's expression doesn't change, but something dims behind his eyes. "Then I take you south to whatever territory you choose, give you enough gold to live comfortably for the rest of your life, and watch my land die knowing I was so close to saving it. You'd really let me go?" Clara doesn't know why she sounds so skeptical. "I'm a bastard, Clara. I've done things that would make you run screaming if you knew the full extent of them. But I have never forced a bond, and I never will. The Sunborn and Moonborn must choose each other, or the magic won't take." He steps back, giving her space. "So I'm asking, will you stay? Will you let me show you what you are?" Clara looks at the book on the pedestal, at the illustration of 2 figures united in power and purpose. She thinks about Thornvale, about 7 years of being worthless and invisible. She thinks about the way Nass knelt before her in the Great Hall, the way his entire kingdom followed suit. She thinks about how, for the first time in her life, she doesn't feel like damaged goods. "Teach me," she says. The smile that breaks across Nass's face is like sunrise, something Clara has never seen in the North but recognizes instinctively. "Then we begin now," he says, and offers her his hand. This time no gloves. Clara's heart hammers as she reaches out. The moment their palms touch, skin against skin, the mark on her shoulder erupts in light, and Nass's eyes flash pure silver. The silver inlay on the floor begins to glow, patterns shifting and rearranging themselves to form a circle around them. And Clara feels it, the bond snapping into place like the final piece of a puzzle she didn't know she was solving. It's not complete, not yet, but it's there. A thread of gold and silver connecting her to this man, this king, this other half of a whole she never knew existed. "Welcome home, Sunborn," Nass whispers, and Clara realizes with a jolt that this frozen, brutal, dying land might actually become exactly that. Chapter 4. Training the Light ****. The training courtyard is exactly as brutal as the rest of the citadel. A vast expanse of ice-covered stone surrounded by high walls, open to the perpetual twilight sky. Clara stands in the center wearing leather training gear that Bessa helped her into this morning, and she's already shivering despite the borrowed furs draped over her shoulders. "You're too cold," Nass observes from where he leans against the courtyard wall, arms crossed over his chest. "Use the mark." "I don't know how to use it," Clara snaps, her breath misting in the frigid air. "It just happens when you touch me." Something dangerous flickers in Nass's eyes at that statement, but he pushes off the wall and approaches her with the careful grace of a predator stalking prey. "Then I'll touch you until you learn to summon it yourself." He's been doing this for hours, touching her shoulder, her hand, her cheek, anywhere that makes the mark flare, and then pulling away before she can get used to the warmth. It's maddening. Every time the golden heat floods through her, Clara wants to grab Nass's wrist and hold on, force him to keep contact until she stops shaking. Again, Nass commands, and places his palm flat against her shoulder. The mark ignites, and Clara gasps as warmth rushes through her veins like summer wine. But this time, instead of just basking in it, she tries to feel where it comes from. There's a well of power somewhere deep in her chest, coiled and waiting. The mark is just the visible manifestation, but the real source is inside. "Good," Nass murmurs, watching her face intently. "I can see you reaching for it. Now hold it when I let go." He removes his hand. The warmth gutters like a candle in wind, but Clara grits her teeth and focuses on that well of power inside her. "Stay," she thinks desperately. Stay warm. Stay lit. For 3 heartbeats, the glow remains. Then it flickers and dies. Clara sags, frustration burning in her throat. I can't. You held it longer than last time. Nass's hand comes to rest on her lower back, steadying her. The touch is casual but grounding. This isn't about strength, Clara. It's about trust. The power is yours. You just have to believe you have the right to use it. Before Clara can respond, the courtyard door slams open and a man strides through. He's nearly as tall as Nass, built like a battering ram, with scars crisscrossing every visible inch of skin. His eyes are cold and assessing as they land on Clara. So this is the miracle? He says, voice like gravel scraping stone. Doesn't look like much. General Voren. Nass's voice drops several degrees. You were expected an hour ago. I was busy. Voren stops a few feet away, making no effort to bow or show deference. Thought I'd see what this Sunborn can do before I waste time believing in children's stories. Clara bristles at the dismissal in his tone, but before she can speak, Nass steps partially in front of her. Careful, Voren. Or what? Voren's lips pull back to show teeth. You'll execute your most experienced general because he questioned your new pet? Go ahead. See how well the next battle goes without me. The tension in the courtyard ratchets up to dangerous levels. Clara can see Nass's hands flexing, can practically feel the violence building beneath his skin. This is going to end in blood if she doesn't. I can speak for myself, Clara says, stepping around Nass before he can stop her. The mark on her shoulder is burning again, responding to her anger and the threat Voren represents. You want to see what I can do, General? Fine. She doesn't think, doesn't plan. She just reaches for that well of power inside her and pulls. The mark explodes in light, but this time, Clara focuses all of it into her voice. Kneel, she commands, and the word comes out wrapped in golden fire. Voren's eyes go wide. His knees buckle. And in a moment that Clara will replay in her mind for years to come, the scarred, battle-hardened general who's never bowed to anyone, but his king hits the ground so hard the ice cracks beneath him. But Clara isn't done. The power is singing through her now, wild and exhilarating, and some reckless part of her wants to see what else she can do with it. Dance, she orders. Voren's body jerks upright against his will. His arms lift. His feet begin to move in a clumsy approximation of a waltz, and the expression on his face is equal parts horror and fury as he spins across the icy courtyard like a marionette on strings. Behind her, Nass makes a sound that might be a laugh hastily converted into a cough. The power drains out of Clara all at once, leaving her gasping. Voren stumbles to a halt, breathing hard, murder written across every line of his face. You little. Enough. Nass's voice cracks like a whip. He's definitely smiling now, though he's trying very hard to hide it. Voren, you asked for a demonstration. You received one. I suggest you show the Sunborn appropriate respect from this point forward, unless you'd like an encore performance. Voren looks like he wants to argue, but after a long moment, he drops into a rigid bow. Sunborn, he grits out, then turns on his heel and stalks from the courtyard. The moment he's gone, Nass lets the laugh free. It's a deep, rich sound that transforms his entire demeanor, and Clara finds herself grinning despite her exhaustion. Did I really just make the fiercest general in the North dance? She asks. You did. Nass is still grinning, and Clara realizes this might be the first genuine joy he's felt in years. The command voice. It's one of the Sunborn's most formidable weapons. When properly wielded, no wolf can resist it. I didn't know what I was doing, Clara admits. I was just angry, and I wanted him to stop being an ass. The best magic always comes from genuine emotion. Nass reaches out and gently tilts her chin up so she's looking at him. You're not worthless, Clara. You never were. You are power and light, and exactly what this land needs. The moment stretches between them, charged with something that has nothing to do with magic and everything to do with the way Nass is looking at her. Like she's precious, like she matters, like she's something worth protecting instead of discarding. Then the moment breaks as Bessa comes running into the courtyard, eyes wide. My king. The council, they've arrived. They're demanding to see the Sunborn immediately. The warmth drains from Nass's expression, replaced by cold calculation. How many? All 7, my king. And they brought their personal guards. Nass curses under his breath. Get Clara to her chamber. Full security detail. No one gets near her. What's happening? Clara asks, fear creeping back in. Nass meets her eyes, and what she sees there makes her blood run cold. The Council of Elders governs alongside the king. They're old, powerful, and deeply resistant to change. If they accept you, we have a chance. If they don't, he doesn't finish the sentence. He doesn't need to. They'll try to kill me, Clara finishes quietly. Nass's hand moves to his sword. They'll try, but they'll have to go through me first. Chapter 5. The Council's Shadow ****. The Grand Chamber where the Council meets is a cathedral of ice and stone. 7 high-backed chairs carved from black rock sit in a semicircle facing a raised platform where Clara stands, feeling very much like she's on trial. Nass is beside her, a silent pillar of strength, but even his presence can't fully dispel the dread coiling in her stomach. The 7 elders are ancient. Not just old, ancient in a way that makes Clara's bones ache just looking at them. Their faces are maps of wrinkles, their eyes clouded and knowing. 3 women, for men, all of them radiating power that makes the air shimmer. The eldest, a woman whose white hair falls past her knees, speaks first. We have heard tales of the Sunborn's return. Her voice is reedy but carries perfectly through the chamber. We have seen the light from the tower, and now we demand proof. Elder Morgoth, Nass begins, his voice carefully neutral. The mark alone should be sufficient. The mark proves nothing, interrupts one of the male elders, a man with a face like a skull covered in parchment skin. Marks can be faked. Prophecies can be misinterpreted. We require the trial of divine flame. Clara feels Nass go rigid beside her. The trial hasn't been administered in 500 years. The records themselves are questionable. Nevertheless, Elder Morgoth stands, leaning heavily on a staff made from what looks like frozen lightning. If this girl truly carries the Sunborn power, she will survive the trial. If she does not, the old woman's shrug is eloquent. Then we have saved ourselves from following a false prophet. And if I refuse? Clara asks, surprised by how steady her voice sounds. The skull-faced elder smiles, and it's the most terrifying expression Clara has ever seen. Then we declare you an imposter, and the king's protection becomes meaningless. The Pax will hunt you. You'll be dead before the week ends. This is barbaric, Nass starts. This is tradition, Morgoth interrupts. The same tradition that has governed the North since before your grandfather's grandfather was born, King Nass. You may rule the wolves, but we are the keepers of the ancient laws. The trial will proceed. Clara feels the trap closing around her. Accept the trial and possibly die. Refuse and definitely die. Some choice. But then she remembers Vorin dancing, remembers the way her command voice made a warrior twice her size obey without question. She remembers the well of power inside her, vast and untapped. I'll do it, she says before Nass can argue further. When? Tonight. Morgoth's smile is sharp as broken glass. At the altar of frozen flame, before the full court, we will see whether the Sunborn's light can withstand the sacred fire of the North, or whether you burn like any common fraud. The council rises as one and files from the chamber, leaving Clara and Nass alone in the echoing space. Clara. Nass turns to her, and she's startled to see something like fear in his eyes. The trial of divine flame is designed to kill. It's fire infused with moon magic, the opposite of your sun power. If you can't control the mark perfectly, if you can't summon enough heat to counter the cold flame. I'll burn, Clara finishes. I know. But Nass, if I don't do this, we lose everything anyway. At least this way I'm fighting. Nass reaches for her, pulling her against his chest in an embrace that's equal parts desperate and protective. I won't lose you. I just found you. Clara closes her eyes, breathing in his scent of winter pine and smoke. The bond between them hums like a plucked string, and she can feel his fear through it as clearly as her own. Then help me survive, she whispers into his chest. We have until tonight. Teach me everything you can. The hours between the council's decree and the trial pass in a blur of training. Nass pushes Clara harder than he has before, forcing her to summon the mark's light over and over until she can call it without his touch, until she can hold it for minutes instead of seconds. The cold flame will feel like dying. Nass explains as they stand in her chamber, golden light flickering around Clara's clenched fists. Every instinct will scream at you to run, to extinguish your power and escape. You have to do the opposite. You have to feed more power into the mark, let it burn hotter and brighter until it overwhelms the cold. And if I can't? Clara asks. Nass's jaw tightens. Then I storm the altar and damn the consequences. They'll kill you too. Better than living in a world without you. The simple honesty of that statement steals Clara's breath. They've known each other for barely 2 days, and yet the bond makes it feel like a lifetime. like they've been circling each other through centuries, waiting for this moment. Clara lets the light fade from her hands and steps close to Nass, rising on her toes to press her forehead against his chest. "Don't die for me," she says quietly. "If this goes wrong, you save your people another way. Promise me." Nass's arms come around her, and for a long moment, they simply stand there, a king and a sunborn clinging to each other in the face of impossible odds. "I promise," Nass lies, and Clara knows it's a lie, but she doesn't call him on it. The altar of frozen flame sits in the oldest part of the citadel, a courtyard exposed to the twilight sky and ringed with standing stones that predate the current buildings by millennia. Every wolf of status in the northern court has gathered, their breath misting in the frigid air, their eyes gleaming with anticipation. Clara walks to the center of the altar circle wearing nothing but her thin white chemise, the same one she arrived in. The council demanded she face the trial as she first appeared, unmarked by northern finery, stripped down to the truth of what she is. The 7 elders stand at cardinal points around the circle, their staffs planted in the ground. In the center, a brazier holds flames that burn blue-white instead of red-orange, flames that radiate cold instead of heat. "Clara of Thornvale," Elder Morgoth intones, her voice carrying over the assembled court. "You claim the title of Sunborn, the celestial sovereign, the light that warms the north. Tonight, you will prove this claim or perish in the attempt. Step into the frozen flame." Clara's legs feel like water. She can see Nass at the edge of the circle, held back by protocol and guards, his expression murderous. She can see Lady Morvain in the crowd, barely suppressing a smile. She can see General Vorin, his face carefully blank, but his eyes respectful, encouraging. She thinks of 7 years being worthless. She thinks of her mother, who died with secrets still locked behind her teeth. She thinks of the power coiled inside her, the same power that made a general dance and a king kneel. Clara steps forward and thrusts her hands into the cold flame. Pain explodes through every nerve. It's not burning, it's freezing, a cold so intense it feels like her blood is turning to ice in her veins, like her bones are shattering into frost-covered fragments. She screams, the sound tearing from her throat raw and animal. "Yield and live," Morgoth shouts, "or prove yourself and ascend." Through the agony, Clara can hear Nass roaring, trying to break through the guards holding him back. She can feel the bond between them stretched to breaking, can feel his desperation and fury through the connection. "Don't die for me," she'd said. But maybe he doesn't have to. Maybe she can live for both of them. Clara stops trying to pull away from the pain and instead reaches for the well of power inside her. The mark on her shoulder ignites, gold light blazing through the white fabric of her chemise. She feeds more power into it, more and more, until the light is blinding. The cold flame flickers, struggles, and then slowly it begins to change color. Blue to purple, purple to red, red to gold. The frozen flame becomes a pillar of warm, radiant sunlight that shoots into the twilight sky like a beacon. The ice coating the courtyard stones melts. The breath mist from the assembled wolves disappears. And Clara stands at the center of it all, the sunborn seal burning through her chemise with a light that makes the elders shield their eyes, hands raised and palms glowing like 2 captured suns. "Enough." Morgoth's voice cracks with something that might be awe. She has proven herself. The sunborn lives. Clara releases the power, and the flame dies. She sways, exhausted, and would collapse if not for the strong arms that suddenly catch her. Nass. He broke through the guards, protocol be damned, and now he's holding her like she's the most precious thing in his kingdom. "You magnificent, terrifying woman," he breathes against her hair. Clara manages a weak laugh. "Did I pass?" "You did more than pass. You gave them a show they'll tell their grandchildren about." Around them, the court erupts in noise, some cheering, some still in shock. But Clara doesn't care about any of them. She's too busy feeling Nass's heart hammering against her cheek, too busy basking in the warmth of her own power, still singing through her veins. She's not worthless. She's not damaged goods. She's the Sunborn, and she's just getting started. Chapter 6. Whispers of the Past ***. Recovery from the trial takes 3 days. 3 days where Clara drifts in and out of consciousness, her body recovering from the strain of channeling so much power. Nass rarely leaves her side. He sits in a chair next to her bed, handling kingdom business with one hand while keeping the other resting on her arm, as if maintaining physical contact will anchor her to the waking world. When Clara finally surfaces fully, clear-headed and hungry, The first thing she sees is Nass slumped in his chair, asleep, dark circles under his eyes and tension still carved into every line of his face. "You should be in your own bed," she croaks, her voice rough from disuse. Nass jerks awake instantly, warrior instincts kicking in before his eyes even fully open. When he sees her looking at him, really looking and not just staring blankly, his expression transforms. "Clara." He leans forward, careful hands checking her forehead, her pulse. "How do you feel?" "Like I stuck my hands in magical fire," she says dryly. "But alive. That's more than I expected." Nass's jaw tightens. "I should never have let them." "You didn't let them do anything. I chose to do the trial." Clara shifts, wincing as her muscles protest. "And it worked. The council accepted me. That's what matters." "What matters," Nass says fiercely, "is that you nearly died, and I was forced to stand there and watch." The rawness in his voice makes Clara's chest ache. She reaches out, threading her fingers through his. "But I didn't die. I'm here. We're both here." Nass closes his eyes and presses her hand against his cheek. They stay like that for a long moment, just breathing, just existing in the same space. Finally, Bessa appears with breakfast. Real breakfast, eggs and bread and meat instead of broth and porridge. Clara eats like she's starving, which she is, and Nass watches with an expression somewhere between amusement and relief. "The council has requested your presence tomorrow," he says as she polishes off the last of the eggs. "They want to begin your formal education in Sunborn history and protocol." Clara makes a face. "Sounds tedious." "It will be, but it's also necessary." "And," Nass hesitates, "there's a library in the West Tower. Records dating back to the first Sunborn. Your mother's name is mentioned in some of the more recent volumes." Clara goes still. "My mother. I think it's time you learned the truth about who she was. Who you are." Nass stands, offering his hand. "Can you walk?" Clara takes his hand and lets him pull her to her feet. Her legs are shaky, but they hold. "Show me." The library is a marvel. 3 stories of books and scrolls and documents preserved behind glass and magic. Nass leads Clara to a section in the back, where the newest records are kept. He pulls a leather-bound journal from a shelf and hands it to her with reverent care. "We found this among the effects of a woman who died 20 years ago in the Southern Territories. A healer named Clara. She had no family, no ties to the north, but when our scouts were searching for information about potential Sunborn candidates, they discovered this." Clara's hands shake as she opens the journal. The handwriting inside is elegant and flowing, and the first entry is dated 23 years ago. Asterisk, they know what Clara is. "The council sent assassins to the birthing room, but Nass the Elder, the king's father, held them off long enough for me to run. I have taken my daughter south, far from the north and the prophecies that would either crown her or kill her. She will grow up as a human. She will be safe, even if it means she never knows the truth of her power." Asterisk. Clara's vision blurs. She flips through more pages, reading fragments. Asterisk. Clara asked about the mark again today. I told her it was a scar, a birthmark, nothing special. The lie tastes like poison. Asterisk. Asterisk. She's 7 now. So bright, so curious. She would have made a magnificent queen. But queens are targets, and I will not let my daughter become a martyr for a dying land. Asterisk. Asterisk. The sickness is getting worse. I don't have much time. I've hidden the truth from Clara her whole life, but when I'm gone, she'll be vulnerable. The elders of Thornvale are greedy. They'll sell her the moment they realize they can profit from her. I can only pray that when they do, she ends up somewhere she can survive long enough to learn what she is. Asterisk. The final entry is dated a week before Clara's mother died. Asterisk. To my darling girl. If you're reading this, it means you've found your way to the north. It means the prophecy was stronger than my fear. You are not cursed, my love. You are blessed. You are the light that will end the eternal winter. And I am so sorry I couldn't be brave enough to prepare you for this. Forgive me. Asterisk. Clara closes the journal carefully and sets it on the table. She doesn't cry. She doesn't rage. She simply stands there, feeling like every truth she thought she knew about her life has been rewritten. She knew, Clara says quietly. She knew what I was. She knew about the North, about the prophecy. And she ran anyway. She was protecting you, Nass says. The council would have killed you as a baby. You were too dangerous to live and too valuable to ignore. But my father, Clara stops. The elders said my father sold me. But the journal says my mother was alone. Nass flips to a different page, one marked with a ribbon. Clara reads the entry there and feels the ground shift beneath her feet. King Nass's father came to me in secret today. He knows where I am. He knows what Clara is. But instead of dragging us back north, he gave me gold and a warning. The council is still searching. They will never stop. When I'm gone, when Clara is grown, they will find her. And when they do, she must go to his son, the new King Nass, who has been dreaming of the Sunborn since he was a child. Nass the Younger will protect her, even if it means war with his own council. Your father didn't sell you, Nass says softly. He was a man named Marcus, one of my father's most trusted guards. When your mother fled north, my father sent Marcus to ensure she made it safely. He fell in love with her, helped raise you until her death, and then, Nass's expression darkens. He made a deal with the Thornvale elders. He paid them to sell you specifically to me when you came of age. He knew you'd be safe here, or as safe as possible. Where is he now? Clara asks. He died 3 years ago defending a northern border village from raiders. He never got to see his plan succeed. Nass meets her eyes. But he spent his whole life ensuring you'd end up exactly here, with exactly the person who could protect you and help you become what you were meant to be. Clara sinks into a nearby chair, overwhelmed. Her mother loved her enough to run. Her father, her real father, loved her enough to orchestrate her return. And now she's here, standing in a library full of histories about Sunborns who came before, about the power she carries in her blood. I was never worthless, she whispers. No, Nass agrees. You were never worthless. You were just hidden, kept safe until the time was right. Clara looks up at him, at this man who has been shaped by prophecy just as much as she has. Did you know? About my father, my mother, all of it. Not until after I bought you. My father's journals mentioned a child in the south, but he died before he could tell me where. I spent 2 years searching before the dream started. Nass crouches in front of her chair, bringing them eye to eye. But even if I'd known nothing, even if you'd arrived as a complete stranger, the moment I saw your mark, nothing else would have mattered. The bond between them pulses, warm and bright. Clara reaches out, cupping Nass's face in her hand, and feels his sharp intake of breath. I'm tired of being afraid, she says. I'm tired of hiding. I want to be what they need. What you need. You already are, Nass says, and kisses her palm. Chapter 7. The Midnight Hunt ***. Clara spends the next 2 weeks in an exhausting whirlwind of training and education. The council's tutors teach her the history of the Sunborns, the rituals and protocols, the ancient language used in formal ceremonies. Nass continues her combat training, insisting she learn to defend herself with more than just magic. General Vorin, surprisingly, becomes one of her most dedicated instructors, though he still grumbles about the dancing incident. Life settles into a rhythm that almost feels normal. Clara takes her meals with Nass in his private chambers. They walk the Citadel gardens together, such as they are in the eternal winter. They spend evenings in the library, reading histories and planning for the future. The bond between them deepens with every passing day. Clara can feel Nass's emotions now, the constant weight of responsibility he carries and the growing warmth he feels for her. And Nass, she knows, can feel her fear and determination, her loneliness and her desperate need to prove herself worthy of this second chance. They haven't kissed, haven't crossed that line from partnership into something more intimate. But the tension builds like a storm gathering on the horizon. It's on the 15th night after the trial that everything changes. Clara can't sleep. The mark on her shoulder is burning again, but this time it's different, urgent warning. She slips from her bed and pulls on a heavy robe, moving to the window to look out at the frozen landscape. The twilight sky is cloudless, stars scattered like diamond dust. The forest beyond the Citadel walls is dark and still. Too still. Clara's instincts, honed by 2 weeks of Vorin's paranoid training, start screaming. She reaches for the bond, trying to sense where Nass is. He's in his own chamber. She can feel him, but he's asleep. Vulnerable. The window explodes inward in a shower of glass and ice. Clara throws herself backward, summoning the mark's light instinctively. The golden glow illuminates a figure crouched on her window ledge, a woman, lithe and deadly, with silver blades in both hands and eyes that gleam red in the darkness. An assassin. Finally, the woman hisses. The false Sunborn, alone and unguarded. She lunges. Clara rolls aside, the assassin's blade missing her throat by inches. She scrambles to her feet, calling the command voice. Stop. But the assassin doesn't stop. She doesn't even slow. Her red eyes flare brighter, and Clara realizes with horror that this woman isn't a wolf. She's something else, something immune to the Sunborn's commands. "What are you?" Clara gasps, backing toward the door. "I am the Council's contingency plan," the assassin says, advancing with liquid grace. "The thing they created to kill Sunborns who displease them. And you, little girl, have displeased them very much by surviving the trial." She attacks again, faster than Clara can track. The blade slices across Clara's arm, drawing blood, and the pain is immediate and shocking. Clara stumbles back, the golden light flickering as panic overwhelms her control. "Nass!" she screams through the bond, pouring every ounce of desperation into his name. The assassin smiles. He's too far away. By the time the door to Clara's chamber explodes off its hinges. Nass stands in the doorway, half-dressed and absolutely feral, his eyes blazing pure silver. He takes in the scene, Clara bleeding, the assassin with her red eyes and silver blades, and something in him snaps. He shifts. Clara has never seen Nass's wolf form. He's always been careful to remain human around her, to not let the beast show. But now, in the space between one heartbeat and the next, he transforms into something massive and terrible. His wolf is the size of a horse, covered in midnight black fur that seems to absorb light, with silver eyes that burn with cold fire. The assassin's confidence falters. A moonborn in full shift, impossible. You should be too weak. Nass doesn't let her finish. He lunges, jaws snapping, and the assassin barely dodges. They clash in a blur of fur and blades, too fast for Clara to follow. Blood splatters, the assassins, judging by her scream of pain. But there are more figures at the window now. 2 more assassins, and these ones are aiming for Clara while Nass is distracted. Clara's fear crystallizes into something harder. Sharper. She's tired of being the helpless princess, tired of being rescued. The mark on her shoulder blazes, and this time, instead of just summoning light, Clara reaches deeper. The shift happens without conscious thought. One moment she's human, the next her bones are rearranging. Her skin is burning away to reveal something underneath. But she's not becoming a wolf. She's becoming pure light. Clara's new form is vaguely humanoid, but made entirely of golden fire. She can feel the power coursing through her, can feel the ancient instinct that knows how to fight, how to defend, how to destroy. The 2 assassins freeze, staring at her in horror. Clara doesn't give them time to react. She moves, not running, but flowing like liquid sunlight. Her hand, now just a shape of concentrated fire, passes through the first assassin's chest, and the woman crumbles to ash instantly. The second assassin runs. Clara lets her go, turning back to where Nass is still locked in combat with the original attacker. His wolf form is bleeding from multiple wounds, the silver blades designed to hurt moonborns. But the assassin is worse off, missing an arm and bleeding from a torn throat. Clara raises her burning hand, and the assassin looks up just in time to see death coming. "Wait," the woman gasps. "The council," they ordered. "The council," Clara says, and her voice in this form is like bells made of fire, "can burn with you." She reaches out and touches the assassin's forehead. The woman ignites from within, golden flames consuming her in seconds until there's nothing left but ash and the faint smell of scorched metal. The silence that follows is deafening. Clara's light form flickers and fades, leaving her standing naked and trembling in the wreckage of her chamber. Nass shifts back to human form, equally naked, bleeding from a dozen wounds but alive. For a moment, they just stare at each other. Then Nass crosses the space between them in 3 strides and pulls Clara into his arms, kissing her with a desperation that speaks of how close they both came to losing everything. Clara kisses him back just as fiercely, tasting blood and smoke and the promise of tomorrow. The bond between them blazes, so brightly she can feel it in her bones, can feel the way they're becoming something more than 2 separate beings. When they finally break apart, both gasping, Nass presses his forehead to hers. "The council sent assassins after you," he says, voice shaking with barely controlled rage. "They'll answer for this." "Later," Clara says. "Right now, I need you to stay with me. I need—" She can't finish the sentence, but Nass understands. "I'm here," he promises. "I'm not going anywhere." Outside, alarms are finally starting to sound. Guards are shouting. But in Clara's destroyed chamber, wrapped in Nass's arms with her mark still glowing softly against his chest, Clara feels safer than she ever has in her life. She's not worthless. She's not defenseless. She's the Sunborn, And she just killed the council's assassins without breaking a sweat. Let them try again. She'll burn them all. Chapter 8. The Great Eclipse ****. The council denies everything, of course. They claim the assassins were rogues, extremists who acted without sanction. Elder Morgoth swears on the ancient oaths that the council would never harm the Sunborn they so recently validated. Clara doesn't believe them. Nass doesn't believe them. But without proof beyond the ashes of dead assassins, there's nothing to be done except tighten security and wait for the next attack. It comes 3 days later, during the Great Eclipse. The eclipse is a celestial event that happens once every decade, when the moon passes directly in front of the dying sun's faint glow, plunging the north into absolute darkness for 3 hours. It's a sacred time for the moonborn wolves, a time when their power peaks and ancient rituals are performed. Clara stands on the Citadel's main balcony, watching the moon creep across the sun's pale disk. Nass is beside her, dressed in ceremonial armor for the eclipse ritual he'll perform in an hour. The entire court is gathered in the courtyard below, waiting. "I don't like this," Clara murmurs. Something feels wrong. Nass's hand finds hers, squeezes gently. "I feel it too, but the ritual must be performed. If we cancel, it shows weakness." The moon slides fully over the sun. Darkness falls like a curtain, absolute and suffocating. And in that darkness, Clara hears the sound of steel being drawn. "Nass!" she screams, but it's too late. Silver blades punch through Nass's armor from behind. He gasps, stumbling, and Clara catches him as he falls. His blood is hot against her hands, and she can feel his shock through the bond, shock and pain, and the terrible realization that he's been poisoned. "Liquid silver," Nass grits out. "Coated on the blades. Clara, you have to." He convulses, eyes rolling back. Through the bond, Clara can feel his wolf dying, the silver eating through his system like acid. Around them, chaos erupts. More blades flash in the darkness. Screams echo through the courtyard. Clara summons her light, desperate, and the golden glow reveals a nightmare. Half the court is fighting the other half. Wolves tear at each other's throats while guards clash with guards. And standing at the center of it all, directing the carnage, are the 7 elders of the council. "Kill the king," Elder Morgoth shouts. "Kill the false Sunborn. Restore the north to its rightful rulers." A coup. They've been planning this all along, waiting for the eclipse when darkness would hide their treachery. Clara cradles Nass's dying body and feels rage ignite in her chest. The mark on her shoulder explodes in light, so bright it turns night into day, so bright that every wolf in the courtyard has to shield their eyes. "You want to kill your king?" Clara's voice echoes with power, with the accumulated fury of 15 days of being tested and doubted and attacked. "You want to destroy the one person holding this land together? Then you'll have to go through me." She sets Nass down gently and stands. The light around her intensifies, spreading out in waves. She's not just glowing anymore, she's radiating actual heat, actual warmth. The ice coating the courtyard begins to crack and steam. "I am the Sunborn," Clara declares, and her voice is the command voice amplified 1,000 times. "I am the celestial sovereign, and you will kneel." The power slams into every wolf in the courtyard like a physical blow. Even the elders, ancient and strong as they are, feel their knees buckle. But they fight it, drawing on centuries of accumulated magic to resist. "A child thinks she can command us?" Morgoth snarls. "We were old when your grandmother's grandmother was born. We are the North." "You were," Clara agrees. And then she does something she's never tried before. She reaches for the bond with Nass, the connection that ties her sun magic to his moon magic, and she pulls. Even dying, even poisoned, Nass's power responds to hers. Silver light erupts from his body, twining with her gold, and together they create something new. Something that hasn't existed in 500 years. The combined sovereign. Clara feels Nass's consciousness merge with hers, feels their powers blend and amplify each other. Through his eyes, she can see the treacherous wolves, can identify every council member who turned against them. Through her power, he can purge the poison from his system, burning the liquid silver away with pure solar heat. Together, they are unstoppable. "You wanted proof of divinity?" Clara's voice is layered now, harmonizing with Nass's unconscious rumble. "Here's your proof." She raises one hand, and every traitorous wolf in the courtyard freezes mid-motion. They can't move, can't speak, can't even blink. The sovereign command has locked them in place like insects in amber. "You plotted to kill your king," Clara says, walking through the frozen tableau toward the elders. You sent assassins after the Sunborn. You staged a coup during the sacred eclipse. And for what? Power. Pride. The chance to rule a dying land without interference. Elder Morgoth can't speak, but her eyes burn with hatred. I could kill you, Clara continues conversationally. It would be easy. I could burn you from the inside out, turn you to ash like I did your assassins. But that would be too quick. Too merciful. She stops in front of Morgoth and places a hand on the old woman's chest. The mark on Clara's shoulder pulses, and she feels the magic inside the elder. Centuries of accumulated power, the very essence of what makes her a moonborn. So instead, I'm going to take what you value most. Clara pulls, and Morgoth's wolf, the primal spirit that's been part of her for 700 years, comes screaming out. It manifests as a spectral shape, silver and snarling, before Clara absorbs it into her own light. Morgoth collapses, suddenly human and mortal and weak. Clara moves down the line of elders, stripping each one of their wolf forms, claiming their power and feeding it into the bond with Nass. By the time she reaches the seventh elder, she can feel Nass stirring, waking, healing. The combined sovereign separates back into two beings. Nass rises, his wounds closed, his eyes burning silver gold. He takes in the frozen court, the powerless elders, and Clara standing triumphant in the center of it all. I believe, he says, voice ringing through the courtyard, that we need a new council. He raises his hand, and the sovereign command releases its hold on everyone except the traitors. The loyal wolves surge forward, seizing the former elders and their conspirators. Vorin appears at Nass's side, his armor dented and bloodied, but his eyes fierce. My king, Sunborn. He drops to one knee. What are your orders? Execute the traitors, Nass says without hesitation. All except the elders. They'll be exiled to the frozen wastes, mortal and powerless, to live out whatever days they have left knowing they failed. It's a harsher sentence than death, and Morgoth's expression as she's dragged away proves she knows it. Clara sways, exhausted, and Nass catches her. The mark on her shoulder has dimmed to a soft glow, and she can feel the bond settling back to normal levels. But something has changed. The connection between them is deeper now, permanent in a way it wasn't before. We did it, she breathes. You did it, Nass corrects. I was dying. You saved me, saved the kingdom, and ended a 500-year power struggle in about 10 minutes. Clara manages a tired laugh. Is it always going to be like this? Assassination attempts and coups and magical battles. Probably, Nass says. But we'll face them together. He lifts her in his arms, ignoring her token protest, and carries her toward the citadel. Behind them, the eclipse is ending, the moon sliding away from the sun. And for the first time in recorded history, the sunlight that emerges is brighter, warmer. The eternal winter is beginning to crack. Chapter 9, The Sovereign's Justice ****. The trials take 3 days. Every conspirator is questioned, their crimes laid bare before the assembled court. Some claim they were coerced, forced to join the coup under threat of death. Others admit they genuinely believed the council's propaganda, that Clara was a false Sunborn, that Nass was too weak to rule, that the North needed new leadership. Clara attends every trial, sitting beside Nass on a newly constructed double throne. The old sword throne has been destroyed, replaced with something that speaks to partnership rather than violence. 2 seats carved from black stone and veined with gold, positioned at equal height. When the verdicts are delivered, Clara insists on mercy for those who were coerced. But for those who joined the coup willingly, who killed their fellow wolves or plotted Nass's murder with full knowledge of what they were doing, she shows no clemency. Justice, she says as the executions are carried out, is sometimes bloody, but it's necessary. Nass's hand finds hers on the throne's armrest. You're learning to be a queen. I'm learning to be what my people need, Clara corrects. Sometimes that's kindness. Sometimes it's steel. The week after the coup, Nass calls a gathering of all the northern packs. Representatives come from every territory, curious and wary in equal measure. They've heard the stories, the Sunborn who survived the trial, the combined sovereign who ended the council's reign, the woman who can strip wolves of their very nature. Clara stands before them in the great hall, wearing a gown of white silk embroidered with gold thread that makes her look like a living flame. The mark on her shoulder is visible through the strategically sheer fabric, glowing softly against her skin. For 500 years, you've suffered under eternal winter, she says, her voice clear and strong. You've starved while your leaders hoarded grain. You've buried children who froze in the night. You've forgotten what warmth feels like, what green things look like, what it means to have hope. The assembled wolves murmur agreement, their faces etched with generations of hardship. That ends now, Clara continues. King Nass and I have bonded as sunborn and moonborn. The prophecy is fulfilled, and with it, the curse begins to break. She raises her hand, palm up, and summons a sphere of golden light. It hovers above her fingers, pulsing like a miniature sun. Then she releases it, sending it floating up toward the ceiling. It passes through stone and ice like they're not even there, rising into the twilight sky. Outside, from every corner of the citadel, wolves gasp as the sky begins to change. The perpetual purple-gray lightens to blue. And then, for the first time in 5 centuries, the sun breaks fully over the horizon. Real sunlight, warm and golden and alive. In the great hall, wolves are weeping. Some drop to their knees. Others simply stand frozen, faces turned upward toward the windows, tears streaming down their cheeks. This is what we can build together, Clara says over the sound of collective awe. This is what we can become. Not the dying north, but the living north. Not a land of endless winter, but a land of balance, where summer and winter both have their place, where moon and sun share the sky. She looks at Nass, and he stands, moving to her side. Together, they address the crowd. We will rule as partners, Nass says. The sovereign consort. 2 halves of one power, working for the good of all our people. No more hoarded grain. No more children freezing. No more clinging to survival while those at the top grow fat on suffering. Change begins today, Clara adds. And it begins with each of you choosing to believe that the North can be more than what it was. That we can be more. The hall erupts in cheers. Not forced, not fearful, but genuine and joyous. The sound is like thunder, and Clara feels it resonating in her bones. For the first time since arriving in the North, she feels like she's exactly where she's supposed to be. Chapter 10. The sun rises ***. 3 months after the coup, Clara stands on the balcony of the Obsidian Tower and watches the impossible made real. Below, stretching as far as she can see, the snow is melting. Not all at once. The change is gradual, deliberate, sustainable. But it's happening. Patches of brown earth show through the white. Ice drips from the citadel walls. And in the courtyard gardens, a single blade of green grass has pushed its way through the frost. The first green thing in 500 years. It's beautiful, Nass says from behind her, his arms wrapping around her waist. He's traded his armor for simple clothing, and Clara can feel the warmth of his chest against her back through the thin fabric of her gown. It's a beginning, Clara says. There's still so much work to do. The southern territories need to be integrated properly. The new council needs training. Half the citadel still looks at me like I'm going to spontaneously combust. They're just not used to having a queen who can actually spontaneously combust, Nass teases, and Clara laughs despite herself. She turns in his arms, looking up at his face. 3 months, and she still feels her breath catch when he smiles at her. Still feels the bond between them humming like plucked strings whenever they touch. Marry me, Nass says suddenly. Clara blinks. What? Marry me, he repeats more firmly. Not because the prophecy demands it, not because the people expect it, but because I love you. Because 3 months ago you walked into my hall in chains and somehow ended up saving my kingdom, my people, and me. Because I can't imagine ruling without you. Because when I dream now, I don't see prophecies. I see you, standing beside me as we build something better than what came before. Clara's eyes sting with tears. We're already bonded. Isn't marriage redundant? The bond is magic, Nass says. Marriage is choice. I want to choose you, Clara. Every day for the rest of our very long lives, I want to choose you. Clara reaches up, cupping his face in her hands. You're supposed to have a ring when you propose, you know. Nass's grin turns sheepish. I may have been carrying one for the past 2 weeks, waiting for the right moment. He pulls a ring from his pocket, a band of intertwined gold and silver, set with a stone that glows with internal light. When Clara takes it, she realizes the stone is light, somehow captured and solidified. A piece of your mark, Nass explains. I had a jeweler work with a mage to preserve it. Sun and moon, gold and silver, bound together forever. Clara slides the ring onto her finger, and it fits perfectly. Yes, she says. Yes, I'll marry you. I'll choose you. Every day, for as long as we both exist. Nass kisses her, and the mark on Clara's shoulder flares in response. Golden light spills from them both, washing over the balcony, the tower, the citadel. Below, wolves look up and cheer, recognizing the sign for what it is. Their sovereigns are truly united. The wedding is planned for the spring solstice. The first spring solstice the North will have seen in half a millennium. Clara spends the intervening weeks working with Nass to restructure the government, train the new council, and manage the delicate process of teaching the land to warm without shocking the entire ecosystem. It's hard work, exhausting work, but it's also deeply fulfilling in a way Clara never experienced in Thornvale. She's not scrubbing floors or hauling water. She's not worthless or invisible. She's building a future. And she's doing it alongside someone who sees her as an equal, who values her opinion, who looks at her like she hung the sun in the sky, which technically she kind of did. The night before the wedding, Clara finds herself back in the library where she first read her mother's journal. She pulls it from the shelf and reads the final entry again. Asterisk, you are not cursed, my love. You are blessed, asterisk. I understand now, Mom, Clara whispers to the empty air. I understand why you ran, why you hid the truth. You were trying to give me a childhood, a chance to be normal before this destiny consumed me. But I'm not angry anymore. I'm grateful. Because everything you did, every lie you told, every secret you kept, it led me here. To this moment, to this future. She closes the journal and places it back on the shelf. Tomorrow, she'll marry a king. Tomorrow, she'll become a queen. Tomorrow, the spring solstice will dawn warm and bright, and the North will celebrate its first true festival of renewal in living memory. The ceremony is held in the courtyard, under a sky that's brilliant blue instead of purple-gray. Clara wears a gown that seems to be woven from sunlight itself, and when she walks toward where Nass waits by the altar, every wolf in attendance bows. Not from compulsion, not from the command voice, from genuine respect and love. Nass looks at her like she's the most incredible thing he's ever seen, and Clara has to blink back tears. He's dressed in black and silver, with a cloak of midnight fur across his shoulders, and he's never looked more handsome. The ceremony is conducted by the new head elder, a woman named Senna who fought against the coup and earned Clara's trust. She speaks the ancient words, binds their hands with cords of gold and silver, and declares them bonded not just by magic, but by choice. When Nass kisses Clara, the mark on her shoulder and the wolf in his chest both flare simultaneously. The light is blinding, beautiful, and when it fades, a miracle has occurred. Every wolf in the courtyard can feel it, the curse, the last remnants of the eternal winter breaking. Not just cracking, shattering completely. The temperature jumps 10 degrees in an instant. The remaining ice on the citadel walls cascades down in a waterfall of melt. And in the gardens, thousands of flowers burst into bloom simultaneously, blue and gold and white, a riot of color that hadn't been seen in the North since before living memory. The wolves erupt in cheers so loud they echo off the mountains. Clara laughs, pure and joyous, and Nass sweeps her into his arms and spins her around like she weighs nothing. We did it, he says against her hair. The winter is over. The North is saved. We did it, Clara agrees. Together. That night, there's a feast that lasts until dawn. The first true dawn the North has seen in 500 years, with the sun rising warm and golden over mountains that are finally starting to shed their ice. Clara stands on the balcony with Nass, watching the sunrise, and she thinks about the girl she was 3 months ago, shackled, worthless, convinced she'd die in the Winter Fang Great Hall. That girl couldn't have imagined this moment, couldn't have conceived of a future where she was powerful and loved and home. But she's not that girl anymore. She's Clara, the Sunborn, Queen of the North, sovereign consort, wife to a king who chose her just as fiercely as she chose him. She's exactly who she was always meant to be. Nass pulls her close, and they watch the sun rise over their kingdom, their thriving kingdom, full of hope and warmth and the promise of endless tomorrows. The souled bride's secret isn't a secret anymore. It's a story everyone knows, a legend being written in real time. And the best part, the story is just beginning. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment. It really helps the channel grow. See you in the next video.